Hi, Deb Carr, and welcome to the webinar. And yeah, I think about 20 people are planning to come. So we'll see how that goes. And I want to welcome those that have logged in already, and we'll start with some introductions. And so the first thing I want to do is acknowledge that I'm on the land of the Kaurna people, and acknowledge the traditional owners and elders, past, present, and emerging, and I'm sure that we want to show respect to all the lands that all of us are on, including you, Deb, who are in Fiji as we speak. I hear you're working and having a bit of a break, but you do so many different things. So I'll do a brief introduction. One thing I do know for sure is that you're doing a PhD currently researching the impacts of RFP. RFP. I've got RFPs on the brain at the minute. Anyway, the impacts of RPL on individuals, and I'm really excited to learn more about that. And I'm sure some of that will come up today. But also, you're an international roaming consultant, really, aren't you, in your field? How do you put your scope? Because I know you do a lot of work with RPL, but also with skills frameworks and skills advice. And you were just telling me what you're doing in Fiji, which is fascinating.
Yeah. It's really, and like it is, I contextualize what I know and my expertise to so many different environments. And it is around skills recognition. It always boils down to that. Whether that's for a rights to work, or whether that's for qualification, or whether that's for occupational mapping, it's or better access to higher ed, being university, or meeting skills gaps in critical areas across the globe, labour mobility, regionally, nationally. It really just boils down to what I know and can do in terms of using a system, a TVET system. Lots of times it's around the VET system, optimising that or changing that and thinking about it differently to be able to recognise the skills that people have. That's my cell, that's what I do, and that seems to be the critical need right across the globe.
Just drawing out a bit, zooming up a bit, you know, what's so important, do you think, about skills recognition? What is it, you know, why do people engage you? Why is it important in the bigger picture?
Fundamentally, at an individual level, people want to be recognised for their competency. They want to be recognised for the skills they have towards a decent job, towards a job that's commensurate of their skills and knowledge, or even just a community recognition. They want recognition, and that's what my PhD is about. Those the value base for individuals for when they go through the RPL process, not necessarily always the credential at the end, but just that meta learning, just becoming aware of the extent and the value of what I know and can do. So at an individual level, it's socially empowering. I was just listening to the OECD and Singapore International Institute of Adult Learning podcast. Barney Glover was there as well. They've written 4 papers on skills first, and so it was a global conversation. And there's still some gaps to move along in terms of skills first, not getting rid of qualifications, but seeing there's a skills agenda that can develop in alignment with that. But the Singapore contribution to that was that what we don't have at the moment is how to empower individuals in their learning and earning journey. Knowing what I get asked at an individual level a lot is, what jobs, how can I move from this occupation to this occupation? So that is important for individuals and meaningful work, but it also is important at economic level. The gross domestic product, the GDP level, is around utilising the skills that you have. Also to compete regionally for skills, they have become a commodity. And so governments are interested in it, and employers. Their most constraining factor is the skills of their people. And recognising the stock of skills that you have in your organisation will allow you to be ahead of the rest.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you know, my focus is on systems and interoperability, and you know, part of this seminar has been to talk about standards, and people get very confused about what we mean by standards, because some people think it's about standardization or, you know, taxonomies or language and so on. But actually it's about interoperability for me. It's about making sure that dislike things can be viewed with where they have the same meaning. It might be written differently. We understand what the meaning is, you know. So standards for me is a lot about meaning. You and I had a fascinating conversation in the car. I was driving.
I knew you'd bring this up.
Yeah, I was going to bring this up when recently, and you know, you and I've been talking for a couple of years, I suppose now, and met through mutual friends, which was wonderful. But you said, I think it's finally dawned on me just how important the standards thing is. What was that moment that what was it that you saw something, a glimmer of like, okay.
I don't know what it was. I think, you know, like with marketing, you've got to see it 7 times before it, you know, really hits home. I don't know. It was an aha moment. And I finally understood what you're on about in terms of standardizing the language of skills. And I see merit in that, absolutely. Particularly because of international mobility. One skills taxonomy may not talk to another. So standardizing the language of skills can move with times as well. Considering the skills shelf life is becoming shorter and shorter. So I agree in terms of a standard for skills language. I mean, I'm an ISO auditor, and my whole practice is based on a standard that I was examined on in using different contexts. So I do now understand the standardization of the language of skills is important, and how that can optimize the portability of skills by using the same type of same type of language to describe the skills.
That's what I was hoping to draw out from you, was the mobility and portability question. And there's another dimension to mobility and portability, which I think sometimes is a problematic in our current system, and that is that we tend to recognize skills at a point in time. And again, I'm looking for systems that allow us to recognize progression in a standardized sort of way, you know. And you know, people have concepts like mastery and so on, but you know, mastery is also very open to interpretation, highly subjective, you know, often. Do you have any views on this? Like, what happens if because as we know in the Australian system, you either have a skill or you don't, right? That's the point in time thing at the various levels, AQF levels, and in terms of what's in the training packages. But what happens if you do better, improve? You know, have you got some thoughts on that?
I'm not going to enter the debate of competent or not yet competent and mastery and proficiency. What I will enter, what I think about is, as you progress your expertise, that is beyond your first qualification or credentials, there are emerging ways to be able to make that more visible. And micro-credentials, for instance. It was a conversation that I had here in a workshop across many countries, was how can you reckon, like in terms of RPL, if we're saying our curriculum, and they call it the curriculum, is outdated, what is the point of recognising your skills into that dated system? And true enough, terrific comment. However, I also had a person that has micro-credential expertise across across the globe, and together RPL and micro-credentials is exponentially powerful for a skills development and recognition system. So a lot of emerging technology, particularly, people learn on the job. They teach themselves, they look at what is happening abroad, and their competencies are beyond what we've got in the standard training, occupational standards. We have, though, for instance, in Australia, we have the VET accredited courses, and it is a quality assured, and I will always emphasise that recognition is quality assured because it needs to have value in the market that you want it to have. And how that is validated or verified is important to the people that are wanting to believe in that statement of skill. So whether that's an employer, a potential employer, or whether that's an education institution, or whether that's a migration officer. In terms of micro-credentials, we do have in the VET system already. It's been in the system for dozens, possibly, of years, where we can get a micro-credential accredited nationally in 12 weeks. I've done 4 of them. I'm currently doing 1. In emerging technologies. And that system is embedded, it's quality assured, and we can get it into the market in 12 to 13 weeks. So we do have mechanisms in the Australian VET system, and part of that process, and I've gone through it 4 times, is to make sure there's no duplication. So we don't want what's already there, and make sure that it's industry needed and it's validated, and it's a very robust system to show that evidence.
So in that context, literally, and Catherine, thank you for your questions. I've got a couple of barrel questions from Catherine McGilvray on the call, but let's start with industry. And also, she's introduced the idea of confidence levels of people that they might have a skill, whether they've got the qualification or not. So there's 2 parts to that question. You know, what the role of industry. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I imagine you think that the current industry validation of VET qualifications is a sound thing. I mean, it might be a bit cumbersome. What do you think? How could it be improved?
Industry validation at design.
Yeah.
Yep. So we've just had that conversation in terms of in this region, you've got a lot of outlying rural learners that we need to work out a way how to practically assess skills and knowledge remotely. And online practical assessment was brought up, and we talked about that. So industry's involvement needs to be right from the start, needs to be from the design stage, and we can do it quickly through the VET accredited courses system, not so quickly through the training package system, but the VET accredited courses system is that a 5-year micro-credential, and with the intention to absorb into the training packages if it's sustainably needed into the future. So that's at the design stage, whether it's training packages or courses. And then during your training and assessment strategy as an RTO, you're partnering with industry to contextualise those skills into a valid work environment. We do have a problem with overly prescriptive units of competency that makes it very difficult to contextualise into lots of industry needs, and that's the rigidity of the qualification system. I believe that it's overly prescriptive. So we've got, but there's an opportunity there to partner with industries to get for assessment and for on the job learning or projects that are based in the workplace. And then the credentialing in certain countries, training providers do not assess. It's third parties that assess. Or if the third party assesses, there's external validators that come in for every cohort. So I'm a big believer of external assessment. And then one person trains and the one person assesses and the one person certifies, that could be a conflict.
Yeah, that's a very good point you're making. But just to pick up a couple of Catherine's other questions, thank you, Catherine, for them. We're just rolling back to standards and language, right? So I fully accept this because I live in it. When we start to work with standards and language, it gets confusing for people, and often language in skills is confusing for people, particularly if they're not used to the sort of system. But that plays to evidence too. In your experience, I mean, what are the things we can do to make evidence gathering,
absolutely
connecting the evidence to the requirement? What can we do to improve that?
Even like, and it is about confidence. And thanks, Catherine, for bringing that up, because you've got the Dunning-Kruger effect, and then you've got the other end of the scope, and you've got the syndrome. What's the other syndrome? Where you don't realise the extent of your expertise. I'm sure someone in the audience. Imposter syndrome, that's it. Yeah. So, or you've got those people that have got the gift of the gab and they can really, talk the talk, but do they really can they really do it? So being able to what I know and can do, and I studied this in my master's. It's a nightmare. It really is a nightmare, particularly when the standard, and you may speak to this, the training package units will stay are competency based and they're task based. That even connecting that to what people do in the workplace is just so hard. And then, like, what does that look like in my workplace, and which workplace? Because I might have worked in lots. And then how can I find a piece of evidence? And many RTOs will default to physical artifacts, which is quite unfair. How can I connect that to an artifact that will be robust enough? And does that go over one PC, or does it go over 2 units, or part of unit? And do I have to put it up each time? Like, it really is a nightmare, and it's soul destroying to try and encapsulate 20 years of your professional identity into performance criteria. So people find it incredibly difficult. What is empowering and helpful to do that is an interpreter, a person in the middle, and that person is a coach. They're a subject matter expert, and they know competency based. So there's 3 advanced competency-based assessment skills that you need to do that, to be able to coach them. And you're not telling them the answers. You can't make up experience. What you're helping them to do, to understand, you do this every day. These are just different words. And you're coaching them. But you're also the subject matter expert. So you must have had broad experience to know what those skills look like in so many different workplaces, so that you can help that person. And then you must have competency-based assessment skill. You must know the principles of assessment and the rules of evidence to make that assessment robust, because it needs to be quality assured if you want to have that value in the market, labour market or education market.
Well, and I'll take a moment for advertisement. Of course, one of the things we're doing at SkillsAware is trying to reduce the time and cost of that evidence management process using AI. But we openly acknowledge you still need a human in the loop, right? Someone's got to say, this is sufficient, and
Also, I've just done a global desktop review of 14 countries across 4 continents, and not a lot of people are digitally literate. So when you're using, and it's great, I mean, we need, I call it blended RPL. So, you're using digital enhancement to be able to make that a little less painful in terms of mapping evidence to a standard, in terms of trying to select what evidence to use, is very helpful. but the digital literacy of being able to play in that space is, we cannot assume, is a given, not only for the learners or candidates, but also for the practitioners. And that has been the digital, besides the digital infrastructure, digital literacy for assessors, institutions and learners has been one of the biggest barriers across the world.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because whose responsibility is it? Like, we hear the Productivity Commission calling for RPL, but you know, should the RTO be doing this? Thanks, Catherine, for those prompts. And also, could we get more involved in the L&D sector too? Like, there seems to be a gulf between the L&D sector and the vet sector, which I just don't understand.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Well, not in my world,
No.
because employers have that pain point more than RTOs. So RTOs, you know, whilst RPL is mandated, there's no punishment really for not doing it. But for enterprises and organisations, particularly ones that go across a country, or like hotels that go across different countries, being able to recognise the skills that are not so visible in your workforce, so that you can move them around, so that you can transfer those skills over to this context, becomes more efficient, particularly when there's not when recruiting is more expensive and the skills are just not there. So to grow your own and recognise your own, there's more economic drivers for employers, large and small, than there is for RTOs. You said the driver is there from a government point of view. So we've got, and the JSCs as well, they've expressed the need for skills recognition in lots of different words. And the employers are asking for it, the peak business bodies are asking for it. The education providers that are not doing it, and
so it's a cost
hole.
Do you think it's just a cost problem? I think it's largely a cost problem, that it costs as much or more to RPL someone than for them to participate in a course. Is that an assumption we should question?
Well, I think it's funding.
Yeah,
I think that as our vet sector in Australia has been relegated to a training system rather than how it started was a recognition system.
Yeah.
And now the funding is all attached to training, rather than recognition. So whilst government has the policies in terms of the rhetoric, it needs to transition into clever and quality assured funding mechanisms.
So perhaps for both the education sector, the RTO sector, but also for employers to give some incentive. Because Catherine makes a very good point. There's an awful lot of people employed in training in industry that are not part of the vet sector, but they could be better connected, I think. Yeah,
absolutely. And we were talking about this. Love having you on board here today, Catherine. We were talking about that here in terms of utilising the in the workplace trainer. In fact, we had industry representative at a lot of our workshops giving a perfect case study of one of the largest employers in this country here, showing the rest in the room, which were all providers and regulators, how it was organically and is being organically done. He has a workshop and also a classroom at the workplace, and they are rotating apprentices in through his workshop doing real repairs for the mill. And so it's been so successful that even the mechanics and the trained and experienced technicians are asking to come in for these workshops. So it's just been very extremely successful. Then I asked the trainer, I said, how did you learn how to train? He's a engineer, a very experienced engineer. And I said, you don't know how to train. You've never learned how to train, better pedagogy. And what about people that, you know, have learning difficulties, and how do you work through that? and there was some online resources that he read, and he had a mentor from a training organization that they hang out together and they just talk around, what do I do here? What do I do there? And I said, well, what else do you want to learn? And he said, I want to learn feedback. What do I do? How do I get feedback from the students, workers? And how do I adapt to that? How can I do that systemically? So in Australia, we have a skill set. It's called the Workplace Trainer Skill Set. And we could work much more closely with industry by utilising those skills in the workplace. Absolutely. And we could upscale them into the trainer skill set as well.
It's an interesting thing. I'm a member of AITD, and I brought this up. I've brought it up a couple of times, and there just isn't an understanding of how to do the next steps. Now, I want to let everyone know that this is the last of a series of 5 webinars that have all now been converted into podcasts and are available as videos. And it's been an incredibly enjoyable thing to do over the last 6 or 9 months we've been doing it. And Deb, you're the last guest, so I'm going to ask you one really big question. If you could change anything, what would you start with?
A little bit. The biggest barrier for RPL across the world is awareness. People that do it go, why didn't I know about this before? And why don't other people know about it? And lots of times they become a champion for it. Yeah. So awareness, it's not a big thing. And B, for the institutions, that it can be a profit-making exercise. It can be a service that you provide to industries, and it's a product, it's a service. They want it, learn how to do it well, to provide that service, to recognise. But then you've got gap training, you've got upskilling as well that comes along with those close industry partnerships. So awareness, and see it as a service to with industry.
And I think that's the theme we've come up with today, which I wasn't expecting, to be honest. But it's mobility, right? So it's mobility from one workplace to another, within one organisation to another role. It's mobility around from one context to another, mobility between contexts. We've got so much work to do on this stuff.
Oh, actually, I'm just looking at a project now that is looking at occupational mapping. So in terms of industry restructures, people are looking at redundancy and retrenching. How can those skills be used in other areas, particularly in green skills, technology, emerging technology, and how can we utilise that? And so occupational mapping is a way to do that en masse.
Yeah, and the other one is, there's this thing about between technical skills that you need for a job versus, as again, thank you, Catherine and Roger, for your comments around transferability. Now, people talk about transferable skills, but it's another messy area, because
it annoys me a little bit to kind of categorize it into hard skills, soft skills, transferable skills. Like, when you're doing something that you have the skills because you've been doing this but differently in a different project or a different job, to categorize it, whether it's, all it is that skills that you can use in other contexts. It's contextualization. And there may be gaps, there may be a little bit of learning. It's the zone of proximal development. This is the area I know I'm using these skills. There's a little bit extra to learn, but I'm using these skills.
Yeah, absolutely. And that notion that recognition is the key, not necessarily, like, we get a bit hung up on exactly matching skill statements and taxonomies, when in fact it's the recognition and capability that we're looking for.
Yeah, and also for individuals not having to start again, like mid-career, and there's so many people transitioning careers now because of the rapid change of work and green skills and the digital transition. People are having to change jobs, and that's where the confidence comes in. Like adults are lots of times not too fussed about going back into the classroom. But they don't want to start again. They can't start again. They've got mortgage, kids, like there's no way. And so they need to be recognised for what they know and can do, and then access that gap training in an equitable, open way, that they don't have to sit in classrooms from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the afternoons.
Yeah. Well, we've come to the end of our time. Deb, it's been delightful. Thank you for making the effort from where you are. And you and I actually haven't met face-to-face yet, but I'm looking forward to that day too. That's not too far away. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today.
Absolute pleasure.